Today on the podcast, I have Calli Studebaker from Confident Kids Therapy. Calli is an occupational therapist out in Ohio who does one-on-one therapy services. She does in-home therapy, but she also has an online component to her business where she is able to share tips with parents from all over the country and all over the world, and has an online course that helps prepare parents to prepare their kids to head to kindergarten. She wants to make sure that parents have all of the information that they need to make sure their child is fully confident and ready heading into kindergarten, not only academically, which I talk about a lot on this podcast, but also more holistically when we talk about sensory regulation, emotional regulation, fine motor skills, gross motor skills. All of that combines into Calli's course and her information that she shares with parents, because she wants to make sure that all parents feel confident sending their kids to kindergarten and that all kids feel confident when they walk through the door for the first time. So let's dive into our episode. Calli, thank you so much for being on the Littles Love Learning podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
All right, well, let's dive in. And why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about you, your background, and how you came to be in this space of occupational therapy?
Yeah, so I went to undergrad for allied health, knew I wanted to work with kids in some sort of the healthcare field. Didn't know what OT was, figured it out by observing at a local children's hospital, and then just honestly fell in love with it. And then I really grew a strong passion for OT when I volunteered at a muscular dystrophy summer camp. And an OT came in and trained us on a bunch of different things because we were one-on-one with the kids. And that camp just really taught me what the true meaning of OT was. And it's just having kids, adults engage in activities that are super meaningful to them. And that whole week, they got to do things that they didn't get to do outside of camp. And it was just really awesome and heartwarming to watch. So I was like, this is what I need to be doing. And so, yeah, I graduated 2018. So I've been in early intervention, I've been in outpatient pediatric care, and I chose to start my own business because I knew that I just wanted to serve families in a better way. I knew I wanted to be in their natural environment. I wanted to not have some time constraint on how long I can see them or have that time cut off when I'm talking to parents about what we did that day, and just really being able to integrate the things I was doing in the clinic into the home. And so, yeah, I started my own practice about 2.5 years ago, and I absolutely love it. So I'm in Central Ohio, seeing 4 to 5 kids a day and going into their homes or to the park or the library, whatever we feel like is the best fit, and just working on a lot of different skills.
That's amazing. What a journey, too, and
Yeah.
all of the different ways you can be involved in occupational therapy. And now you've kind of found the best place for you in peds.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So,
been absolutely like, I don't know, it's just been a really growing experience for me as an OT, just being out on my own and just learning from parents, learning from the kids, and just building a network of other providers too. So,
that's amazing. So, what would you say your favorite part of being an OT is, and maybe the most challenging part?
oh, good question. I think my favorite part, honestly, is just the creativity I get to have. I love finding things that kids are really interested in and using that in our sessions just to create more motivation on skills that they're not good at, not comfortable in, not confident in yet. And so just using play, using their interest to build those skills, I think is my favorite part. Just getting to see them light up when I bring something new that they are really into. Like one of my clients loves airplanes and very like does not like handwriting at all. And so we did a what do you call it? The thing you see at the airport when the time arrival, the departure time, all of that. We made the signage for that day. And it was just like, I've never seen his handwriting look better. So that was super fun.
What a great idea to make it meaningful for him. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And so, yeah, I think that's just honestly my favorite part. And then the most challenging part, is just the energy I think it takes to work with kids all day and just to have that brain power and that capacity to think of new things on the spot and change your plan and just be flexible all the time. But I think when I feel my energy draining, I just go back to my why and the privilege that it is to play just a huge role in that kid's life in their early years of development. So I think that's really what keeps my energy up most of the time.
I can totally empathize with that as a teacher.
Yes.
We are recording this podcast after a day, you working with kids all day, and I was subbing in kindergarten all day. Definitely takes a lot of energy to work with kids. So thank you for being here after all of that.
For sure.
So, since you are here, and most of the listeners are parents that have preschoolers or kindergartners, and they are concerned about their children's reading development and also their writing development, I really wanted to talk with you about handwriting.
Yeah.
Handwriting is one of those topics that a lot of parents might be concerned about their kids' handwriting or especially their pencil grasp, but they don't really know what to do about it because that's not something that not all teachers have really great tips on that because we're not really trained on that. And so we defer to experts like occupational therapists. And so I would love for you to just kind of walk us through that timeline of development, what parents should be looking for as their child should be developing a more mature grasp.
Yeah, I guess in terms of development for handwriting and fine motor skills, it starts really young. It starts when they're crawling. It starts when they're starting to use both sides of their hands, crossing midline, and just working on picking up small objects. It starts very young, and then it just continues to build on those skills. Um, and I think when looking at like specific handwriting skills, you want to see those pre-handwriting skills, like imitating lines, the vertical, horizontal line, imitating a cross, and then working more on their name and uppercase letters. And I typically follow Learning Without Tears, which they group the letters together as they're formed. So, and they also encourage parents and teachers to teach uppercase letters first, just because it's developmentally appropriate. Once they know the foundational uppercase letters, they are able to write most of their lowercase letters. And so just starting with letters that they're familiar with, like their name, writing in uppercase, and then moving on from there. I think that's the most beneficial way to do it, in my opinion.
I love that. And I would love to just point that out to the listeners because online there's a lot of debate on handwriting and if you should start with uppercase letters or lowercase letters. And there will be teachers and advocates on both sides. But I have always advocated for uppercase letters first. And I also follow handwriting without tears for the most part. And I love that these recommendations are from occupational therapists because, like I said, we as teachers, we're not trained on this. And so I defer to you who have been trained on this. And so I love hearing that. I think it can get a little noisy in the online space, but if we look to the experts who are trained in this, I think that's the best advice. So if you are listening and you are wondering, should I start with uppercase or lowercase letters? Calli and I are in agreement. Start with uppercase letters. I think it makes the most sense. And then
Yeah.
you can transition to lowercase letters. And it's not going to be a hard transition because they already have, they know how to write. They know how to write from top down. They know how to write in the correct direction. And they also just understand what handwriting instruction is. And so I
Hmm.
think it makes it a lot easier to transition.
Yeah, I
Are there
agree.
are there any red flags that parents should look for either with their child's pencil grasp or with the way they're writing the letters that would cause you as an OT to feel concerned?
Yeah, I guess when it comes to their grasp, I like to see them develop like more naturally. And if you're seeing like the progression of the grasp continue to grow and develop, so you want to see like that palmar grasp and then more of like the rotated when your wrist is down, and then you want to see more fingertip, and then they start to use more of that dynamic movement where you see them move their fingers. Um, so that's what I look for in a grasp. And I think as long as they are not, there's no like pain when they're writing, they have good endurance, they have good speed, you can read what they're writing, then I wouldn't be too concerned about their grasp. But if you are seeing some of those red flags like pain, endurance, you can't really make out what they're writing, maybe start to look at their grasp a little bit more closely to see if it's more of like the tripod or the quadrupod grasp, and start to encourage that a little bit more. But when it comes to what was the other question? The handwriting part? I feel
Yeah,
like there
if
was
there
like
were
a
any,
two-part.
yeah, I guess the grasp, which I think parents can see, and some parents might not realize that that grasp is an immature grasp or maybe a
Yeah.
grasp that they could work on, and also just the way they form their letters. If parents should be looking at the way that the child's actually forming the letters.
I think formation is key. If we have a strong foundation with forming our letters from the top down, you'll see it transition to the way that they are writing like longer sentences and being able to keep up a little bit better. If we're writing from the top down, it's just a little bit more smooth, a little bit more fluid, as they continue to need to write longer and more sentences. And yeah, I just think you'll see it go a little bit more smoothly.
Yes, I agree. And having that muscle memory for how to form the letters, doing it the same
Mhm.
way every time, just it speeds things up so much so that they can free up their brain space for spelling or for coming up with
Yep.
these really creative ideas. I think that's great advice. Now, if a parent is feeling concerned about handwriting or grasp, what are the steps? Should they be reaching out to an OT? Should they be contacting their school? What are the resources that maybe they could look for?
Yeah, I think if they're in school, school would be the way to go. There are occupational therapists in schools that specialize in fine motor and handwriting. So I think you can even get like them screened for OT and then possibly get an assessment. That would be kind of the first way to go. And then if they do qualify for OT, I would highly encourage parents to see what the OT is doing with their child so that they can support them at home, because that 30 minutes every week or every other week really is going to make a huge difference. I mean, it will some for sure. But I think you'll see a bigger impact if the parents are carrying over those activities and those skills in the home.
That makes sense. And I wonder if you see a bigger impact because you're in homes with these kids that you're seeing, or the library or the park, because the parent is right there and they're watching what you're doing with their child. And then they're able to continue that during the week.
Yeah, for sure. And been like a big motivation for me as a private therapist is to only see kids for a short period of time. I don't think that kids need to be in therapy for years and years and years. I think once we are able to give parents and kids the skills at the time that they need them, working on the skills that they need for that age, and then kind of letting them see how they do on their own. And if the concerns continue to pop up later on, you can always come back. But I definitely like to see parents take more of the lead when it comes to development and carrying over the skills outside of OT sessions.
I love that. It's like you're trying to put yourself out of a job.
I
But
know.
I love that. You're not trying to see them forever and ever. You're trying
No,
to get them independent and get the parents to support them.
for sure.
That's awesome. I do feel a little bit like that also with wanting to teach parents how to teach their kids to read. I don't need that job as the tutor. I don't need to see the kids. I would like the parents to be able to do that themselves. I think that's the
Yeah.
best way for sure. Are there any tools that you would recommend? I know some teachers will use pencil grippers, or parents will be going on Amazon and trying to find something to help with their child's pencil grasp. Is there anything
Mhm.
you recommend, or would you say steer clear of that? Or is there anything at home that they could use that would help with their child's pencil grasp?
Yeah, I think I would like to see the child develop a grasp without the use of any grippers early on. I think I tend to go to grippers when there's already a very established grasp that needs changed because of the pain or the endurance issues or the formation issues. I like to see them develop if they're preschool and kindergarten and we're still working on grasp. I think that's totally fine to stay away from the grippers. There can be some outliers for that rule, but for the most part, I think building skills, building their fine motor strength up, can kind of alleviate some of those issues that you might see with grasp before going to a gripper.
I love that. That makes total sense. And you recommend the small pencils if we can?
Yes, golf size pencils, broken crayons. I sometimes will even use like broken Q-tips and just have them
Oh,
use the tiny Q-tip to paint. Painting with pom poms or painting with tiny sponges. Honestly, anything that is really tiny, I can try to
uh,
use as as a utensil in some way. So yeah, I would try to smaller is better. I don't like the chunky crayons or the big thick markers. Yeah, anything small is ideal.
I totally agree with you. I did a post recently on social media that in my brain, I think there was a marketing department at some crayon company or some marker company where they thought, how are we going to sell these big markers? Oh, we're going to market them as preschool markers and preschool crayons and preschool pencils to make more money. I don't know if you've noticed, but
Yeah.
those chunky pencils are usually a lot more expensive. and they're geared toward preschoolers. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I think it's just a way for them to make more money because the smaller
Yeah.
ones are way better. We
Yeah.
don't need to buy anything special for our kids.
Yeah. Like the only way they can hold that is like this.
Exactly.
Like their
Oh,
tiny hands can't fit around the
yeah.
giant. Yeah.
I think the same about dry erase markers, which it's very common for kids to use dry erase markers in school and in kindergarten, and it's usually those big, thick ones. And so I know
Hmm.
at my school, I've advocated for the thin ones, even though they're taller, they're thinner. And I think
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference in the way the kids are able to hold it. So if you have the option, I don't think that the thin ones are any more expensive than the thick ones. You can get the black expo markers, but try to get the thin ones, and I think it will make a difference.
For sure.
Our listeners. Okay, so you are a mom yourself. So you have
Yes.
your two little ones at home. And how old are your girls?
Oh my gosh, almost 4 and then 1.
Oh my gosh. So yes, you're busy all day with kids. You come home to your own kids at night. So I was just curious, now that you're a mom and you have all of your experience in OT, are there any activities that you do with your girls because you know it's going to benefit them, or maybe any activities that you don't do specifically because you've seen problems that it can cause or you're trying to avoid a problem?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in that I do because I am an OT is involving them in everyday household tasks as much as I can because we do use a lot of our fine motor skills for those things like cooking and fastening our shoes and doing buttons and cleaning. A lot of those are fine motor skills. So, I mean, it's kind of beneficial for me and the child to get them involved earlier. And then I think opportunities to engage in fine motor activities like Play-Doh and just various games and toys that use their fine motor skills. And we love Play-Doh around here. Any Play-Doh utensils, any Play-Doh toys. We mix Play-Doh all the time. It's yeah, a Play-Doh house here. And then I think crayons and craft supplies are available probably at all times. And then another thing that I always encourage parents to do is to write on any like vertical surface. So getting window markers is a good one, art easels, taping coloring pages on the wall, and even having them color while they're laying down on their belly. It just helps to encourage that fine motor strength, shoulder strength, and then it also puts their hand in a more optimal position for writing too when you're doing that. So yeah, vertical surfaces are a good one too.
I love that. Those are great tips. Yes. We've done that in class before. I've had the kids tape up their names on the wall and then they use a marker to write their name standing up, laying down. I love that. Laying down on your
Mhm.
belly. Those are really great tips. Now, you mentioned at the beginning of this episode that you do see clients in person in Ohio, but let's now talk more about Confident Kids Therapy online and how you have now taken your business to social media and you have an online course. And I'd love to know all about that.
Yeah, I honestly just wanted to make a bigger impact. I love the preschool and kindergarten age group, but I also think that parents aren't all that aware of like what is expected of their child when it comes to all of these different areas of development, like fine motor and gross motor skills and self-care skills, social skills. I think um, kids are often falling behind in those social emotional skills and having more problems with regulation and sensory processing. And I think it just all affects one another. So I created a course that's very much like holistic from an OT standpoint when it comes to building those foundational skills in all of those different areas. Because I feel like if we have that support and that foundation early on, you'll see kindergarten start to thrive a little bit more in the academic area as well. So and I also just think parents could use the knowledge. I think that even if your kid doesn't have an identified need, that OT can really make a great impact on your guys' life and your child's life. So, yeah, my course is called The Confident Kindergartner, and we start with the module about play and how skills can be developed through play and how to really harness the power of play to build all the different skills. And then we go into more like sensory processing and sensory health and really trying to build like a sensory rich environment for the children to explore and develop their sensory systems. There are 8 sensory systems that we have. And so just making sure that kids have the opportunity to engage in all of their different senses. Um, just to work on sensory processing. And then I also very much believe that sensory processing impacts our emotional regulation, and those two things are tied together. So I think having the knowledge of those things is going to be really powerful for kids early on when it comes to being able to regulate their emotions. And then with the third module, we go into fine motor skills, development activities, and then the same thing with gross motor for module 4. And then the last one is about just building confidence and independence in everyday tasks. So, like I said, it's very holistic. Even if your child doesn't have an identified need, I think knowledge is power. And the more you know, the better we can do.
I love that. And I love that you've taken it online so you can impact families across the country and across the world. And as a mom who sent 2 kids to kindergarten now, I know what a big transition that is.
Yeah.
Academically, I know how to prepare my kids. And I do think kids need to be prepared academically, but so many other skills go into kindergarten readiness, like you were mentioning, and a lot of sensory regulation, emotional regulation. There's a lot of growth that happens in kindergarten. We see with students, and I've seen with my
Yeah.
own kids, and having the tools before your child goes to kindergarten would be so helpful. The first couple weeks when you first send your child to kindergarten,
Oh,
especially your
I can only
oldest,
imagine.
I mean, even as a teacher, I was like, wait, what is happening? It's just so much for them. It's such a big transition. And so having those tools now, getting into your course now, so that when their child does go off to kindergarten in the fall, it's going to be so helpful.
Yeah, I hope so. That's the
Yes,
goal, right?
absolutely. So if you could have listeners take one big takeaway away from this episode, what would that be?
um, I think just being able to have more knowledge around these different areas of development and ways to support your child, I think would be the thing I would want them to take away the most. And just really understanding how sensory processing can play just a huge role in all of the different areas of development. And like you said, just having that foundational knowledge before it becomes a need, before it becomes a challenge or an issue, I think would be super helpful.
I think that's great. And I think that can be tricky when parents don't think there's a problem. So they're not looking for a solution, but we want to make sure that there never develops a problem. So let's put something in place now, those foundations now, and then we're never going to get to that problem. We're just going to have the right foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, before you go, I want to ask you the same question that I'm asking all of my podcast guests. Since this podcast is called Littles Love Learning, because we know how much little kids love learning, I would love to know, what do you love about working with these little kids?
Oh man, I love seeing their faces light up when they're doing a new skill or a skill that's really hard for them and they're doing it for the first time. And it's honestly just so awesome to see. And I think too, watching the parents watch them is really fun too, because it's just like they can see their child grow in their confidence and their self-esteem just through learning a new skill. So yeah, I think that's my favorite part.
I love that. It really is. That pure joy on their face just cannot be matched. It's so
Yeah.
exciting when they learn something new. Well, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell everyone where they can connect with you? Because I'm sure they're going to want to learn more about your course and about OT and how that can help their child.
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram at Confident Kids Therapy, and then I also have a website, confidentkidstherapy.com.
All right. Well, I will make sure to link all of those down in the show notes, or if you're watching on YouTube, in the description box so you can make sure you can connect with Calli.